The Clise orchid collection is now 100 years old. It dates to a donation by Anna Clise in 1921. Anna Clise donated a large set of plants, and they have been maintained by the park staff ever since. So this is the 100th anniversary of that collection of plants. Currently, the plants are worked upon by the gardening staff of the conservatory and volunteers to maintain it. We have the plants in this part in zone 3 of the production area, and then the plants are taken from here when they're in bloom and brought up to the conservatory and put on display by the gardening staff. But today we just wanted to show a few of the plants in bloom here, and then we'll show some more of the plants in bloom up in the conservatory. The first one is one that's very neat that people will not recognize. This is a vanilla orchid. Vanilla is a spice that we commonly use, and it is an orchid. This flower would eventually end up as a seed pod that is the dried seed pod of the vanilla plant. It's very hard to bloom these in Seattle because it's just not hot enough here. These are really heavily tropical plants that need a lot of light and a lot of heat. A little easier plant is this plant, Dendrobium regina, which is a epiphyte. Most of these plants, most of the orchids, are epiphytes, and epiphytes means that they grow on trees, not into the trees. They're not parasites. They grow on the trees. In this case, it's mounted on bark, and this is its root ball. And you can see that it not only blooms, it has old blossoms on it. Another type of orchid that you see are the slipper orchids. These are found, this particular one is a New World orchid found in South America. And this is a related one, a couple of related ones here. There are two types of slipper orchids that are found in the tropics, Paphiopedilums and Phragmipediums. These are samples of each. This is a more local orchid. It's a South American, Central American orchid. It's the Cattleya family. And then this is another very interesting slipper orchid. This one is called Andean Fire, and it blooms almost perennially. You see, each of these little nodes has been a flower that has bloomed in succession. And here is a Jumella, which is kind of a very interesting, very different than all of these other plants. It's an African tropical plant, and the flower stems come from the base rather than from the middle of the plant. So this is the conservatory palm house now, palm room, some people call it. And the orchids are on display here. The objective of the conservatory is to show a lot of diverse sets of plants, many of which cannot grow cannot grow here in Seattle, in the Seattle area. So none of these orchids could grow out of doors here in Seattle. So we have them on display on a few benches here, allowing for people to see them and to get up close. We have quite a diverse selection of them. Right now we have a lot of orchids in spring. We have a lot of Cymbidium orchids in bloom. Cymbidium orchids you can sometimes find in the stores. They are very, very good bloomers. And then of course we have the usual purple Phalaenopsis. The Phalaenopsis are the kind you can buy in any grocery store these days. Over here is an Australian Dendrobium. It's called White Christmas. It must be a little bit off of its time of the season because it's a little late for Christmas, but it's putting out quite a nice display of flowers. So back over here, we have another display, and this display each display is set up by the gardener. As you saw, it was all pots down in the other in the production area, but here it's all blocked with ferns to give a nice display that you can stand in front of. This here is a oncidium, quite an interesting oncidium, and it blooms very regularly here for us. Here's one stem that's completely in bloom, and a second stem coming out of the same pot that is about to bloom shortly. Then over here we have a lot of the slipper orchids. These particular slipper orchids are called bulldog orchids. They've been around, they're hybrid orchids, and they've been around for about 40 years as hybrids. There are quite a few of them that are quite pretty and quite varied in presentation. These are mostly the same. So then over here, we have a set of plants that are just finishing. These are also Australian dendrobiums. This was quite a big production of white, very, very, very fragrant flowers. This is Dendrobium kingianum, and is grown here. We have about a dozen plants of this plant because they give a very good beginning of March display of plants. And one of the problems that we have is wanting to keep plants in bloom all year round. So we have quite a diversity of plants. We have about 20 to 25% are the slipper orchids. We have a lot of cattleyas, which are from the New World. And then we have a lot of dendrobiums to give us a different time of year for blooming. So most of the plants only bloom once a year, so we need quite a diverse set of bloom times. And here we have some nice white Phalaenopsis, and inside here are the stems of some of those same oncidiums that we saw on the other bench that will be blooming very shortly. And then over here, we have more of the slipper orchids, another very, very pretty cymbidium. The yellow cymbidiums are really, really quite fantastic, as are these white slipper orchids. All of these plants, every one of these plants is an epiphyte. So every one of the plants could be grown mounted on a mount. We grow them in pots for our convenience, not for the plant's convenience necessarily. So here is a mounted plant. Again, we saw one mounted plant down below. This is a xylogeny. It's Xylogeny lawrenceana. Has very, very large, beautiful flowers that have a kind of this orange and yellow striping on the lip of the flowers. This is grown on a cork mount, and we hang it from the ceiling or hang it from the wall, and it blooms for us every year.